Good morning. I just realized I didn't have my mic in front of me. Hello, everyone. All right. Nice to see you all. It is MLK Day. It is January 15th of 2024. Thanks for being here. It's Resistance Live. I forgot to drop a note this morning on Threads about the broadcast because here we are and my kids are off from school and everything's chaos. But thank you for joining us nonetheless. Today, for our visually challenged viewers, I'm wearing a black fluffy sweater. It's cold here again. I know that it's freezing where many of you are located as well. I'm coming to you as always from occupied Tongva territory here in Southern California. And my pronouns are she, her. Okay. Nice to see you all here this morning. We actually are in for, and this was one of the reasons why I decided to broadcast today, notwithstanding the holiday, we're in for kind of a crazy week this week. And today, as you're all aware, is the Iowa Caucuses in sub-zero weather. So it's going to be kind of an interesting development today. I don't think there's going to be any doubt at the moment that Trump is going to win this, but the question is by how much? And I have to remind you all that there were some, I said this yesterday on Progressive Coffee Hour, there were some interesting final polls yesterday and over the weekend that seemed to indicate that Trump was under 50% in GOP polling, which is the first time that that's happened in Iowa. Again, you all know I take these polls with a grain of salt, and I have to remind everybody that the flip side of this is that none of these polls are being conducted on people who actually ignore anonymous phone numbers on their phones. So we have to be thoughtful about all of this. But at the same time, I am really curious to see what happens with Nikki Haley. I agree with the commentators this morning who are saying that Ron DeSantis' campaign is going to be over by tomorrow. I think that we are, mere hours away from him announcing that he's done. And then we will be onward to Nevada and New Hampshire and South Carolina between now and the end of February. I don't think there's going to be a surprise, but on the other hand, I'm a little bit curious about the results that we're going to get today. So everybody who happens to be in Iowa, I know we have a lot of folks in Iowa who watch here. Please stay safe, stay warm, and, protect yourself. Donald Trump was quoted yesterday as saying that he didn't care if people died as long as they came out to vote for him. So we're not going to do that. But I do want to just remind everyone that this is our very first event of the 2024 presidential election cycle. And I know we're all going to be watching it from where we are tonight. Okay. We had a bunch of questions this morning about upcoming legal developments. And so I want to spend a little bit of time on that because it is actually a really big week. E. Jean Carroll's second trial starts tomorrow. This one, it differs slightly from the first one because liability for defamation is no longer at issue. And as I mentioned last week, Judge Kaplan issued a ruling that essentially said, you can't introduce any claims that she lied about sexual assault. You can't introduce any claims that, this whole thing was fabricated. You can't introduce any claims that further defame her. And you're not going to be able to kind of run roughshod over the facts here when the conclusions have already been reached in the first jury trial. So the real issue here is the amount of damages, including punitives. And punitives are where it could get very serious. Because in addition to the fact that we're currently waiting on a ruling from Judge Engoron, it's going to come sometime in the next 15 days, apparently, on the issue of the New York civil fraud case, punitive damages are the place here where the numbers could skyrocket against Trump personally, particularly because he has continued to defame her since as recently as the last few days. And he hasn't shown any remorse whatsoever. Nothing about the first trial has stopped him. So this is an instance where punitive damages certainly will be something that could get very heavy in the interest of trying to deter him from continuing to do it. All right. I am not optimistic about his chances in this trial. So we have that coming up. Then on Wednesday, we're awaiting a determination by the Maine court on because the Maine Supreme Court is reviewing the determination by the Secretary of State to keep Trump off the ballot. That's coming up on Wednesday. We are expecting to hear from them on what's going to take place there and whether or not the Supreme Court is going to allow that determination to stand. I'm not going to game that one. I'm not a Maine attorney and I'm not particularly familiar with the Maine Supreme Court, but this all happens against the backdrop of the Colorado ruling that is on appeal to SCOTUS, where on Thursday, Donald Trump's opening brief is due. So we have this whole series again of like dominoes falling right now on the issue of how this is all going to play out. So, I'm going to have my eyes on all of this week, and we'll be here live every day this week. Wednesday, we're going to be early. I have to remind you all, I have an event at my kids' school at the time of the broadcast ordinarily. So we will be at 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday only. But I will be here every day to kind of continue talking about all of this because I know you all are going to want to hear about it. All right. We have another interesting thing happening this week on the legal front that somebody asked about this morning over on the Patreon feed. And again, reminder, if you're not yet a subscriber, you can head over there and check it out. Patreon.com/Resistance Live. This is one of the cases that the Supreme Court has taken up this term that challenges the Chevron Doctrine. Now, many of you who have been here for a while have heard me talk about this a lot because the Chevron Doctrine is what allows agencies inside the federal government to do their job through regulation without having every single thing that they do have to be approved by Congress. All right. So meat regulations are done by the USDA without the Congress having to without the Congress having to legislate what quality of beef should be permissible into the American food stream, what it has to be labeled as, whether or not any warnings should be on it, right? All of that is done through administrative agencies. EPA regulations. The EPA carries out its mandates, rules how many parts per million of fluoride can be in your drinking water without all the details having to go through the legislative process. The Chevron Doctrine is what allows the administrative part of our government to continue to function. So coming up on Wednesday, we have oral argument before the Supreme Court in a case called Relentless versus Department of Commerce. This is one of several cases that the Supreme Court has taken up this term that is in essence a case filed by far-right actors in an effort to overturn the Chevron Doctrine. And one of the things that a lot of people are very worried about is that if the Chevron Doctrine is overturned, basically the executive branch of the government ceases to function. This is something that, by the way, has been on the agenda of folks like Steve Bannon for a very, very long time. Now, we will not have a ruling on Relentless, this particular case, aptly named case, when we consider what the far right is doing in the courts. We will not have a ruling in this case until May or June, probably. All right. Because I'm going to remind you all that the most significant cases of a term are generally saved until the end of that Supreme Court's term, which is usually the last day in June, occasionally when they're finalizing a ruling the first few days of July. So by the beginning of July, we will have a ruling on that. All right. But one of the things that I want everybody to just be conscious about here is that this is not the end of the story, even if the court goes that way. And I have to say, we all know what the court did in Dobbs. If the Chevron Doctrine is overturned, what it will mean is that literally anything that any agency wants to do in our government to fulfill their legal obligations will have to be run through the Congress. So if you want the Congress to decide whether or not the latest version of an EpiPen should be sold on the open market, if you want the U.S. Congress to decide whether or not a given book should be endorsed by the Department of Education, if you want to tie up Congress from now until the end of time with the tiny fractional details that the administrative organizations within the executive branch usually address through their own regulations, you will be in favor of this case. I have to say that I think that it's a stretch here because the implications for how our federal government runs will be so enormous. I have a hard time imagining that there are enough justices on this court who will not recognize the implications of this, okay? Because we're talking about everything from like the regulation of nuclear power plants down to how many times you have to wash lettuce before you stick it in a cut bag to be sold in Trader Joe's. Like, it's literally everything. Everything that the federal government regulates through agencies is up for grabs if the Chevron Doctrine is overturned. So I am cautious, and also, I think Alito and Thomas are lost to everything. I'm not convinced that we will have enough votes to kind of overturn Chevron altogether. But yes, I mean, Tina's right here in the comments. Our country would collapse if the Chevron Doctrine was overturned. So everybody's got their eyes on this. Again, the oral argument is on Wednesday. We will have some tea leaf reading as a result of that oral argument, like we do with every major Supreme Court case. The Chevron Doctrine, I believe, that's a good question, Roberta. Don't quote me on this because I didn't Google it this morning, but my recollection is that the Chevron case has been in existence since the 60s, the Chevron Doctrine. So it's a long, long time. And at the bare minimum, it's like decades and decades. Like we're talking like 40, 50, possibly 60 years. So it's something that everybody should be aware of as we pay attention to what's happening here. All right. Okay. Somebody asked a question about the Biden Victory Fund. I just want everybody to be aware of this when you're considering how your donations are going to go. The Biden Victory Fund is the Biden reelection campaign donation source. Okay. So if you donate to the Biden Victory Fund, you're donating to the Biden reelection campaign. I have friends at the top of the Biden Victory Fund. Roger Lau is currently their senior advisor. I know a number of other people who are going to be taking a lead role in the Victory Fund and the campaign. So you can feel free if you are interested in making 1984. Thank you. You know, it's really funny. I was going to say initially the 80s. And then that sounded too recent to me, but thank you for Googling it and looking it up. All right. Because I know it came out before I went to law school by a lot. So that's a decade before I went to law school. All right. In any event, if you're going to make donations, make them to the Biden Victory Fund. All right. Because that is the source for the campaign. All right. So that was a very good question. I know a lot of you have heard me talk about how, you know, if you're donating to a random super PAC, you should know where the money is going because often it doesn't actually go where it's supposed to go. It goes to pay the people who founded the super PAC. And there are some, unfortunately, very serious examples of this in current YouTube commentator universes. All right. So when you are making a donation, donate directly to campaigns. Do not donate through the super PACs that are set up by people like me. And you will never see me come on here and ask you to donate to a super PAC because I'm not interested in getting paid that way. All right. It's kind of a grifty way of doing things, if you ask me. All right. Okay. Somebody asked whether or not Judge Canon can be taken off the case. The short answer to that is no. All right. There is a chief administrative judge of the Southern District of Florida where if she did something that was overtly unethical, an argument could be made that she should be removed from the case. Jack Smith could also file a motion for her to recuse, but she's not going to do that. And I'm sure that he's gamed this out already because the only thing that a motion like that would do would alienate the judge. All right. She can be impeached like any other judge who's appointed to a lifetime term on the federal bench, but she is not likely to be going anywhere anytime soon. There was a note that, you know, from another lawyer who I generally respect over the weekend about the fact that, you know, she is sitting in this courthouse in her own district alone. She is in a courthouse that doesn't get a lot of traffic, and she doesn't have a lot of colleagues to consult with on some of these issues. Now, I don't think that's any excuse for the way in which she's delaying this case. Over the weekend, she denied an effort to get Trump's lawyers to state on the record whether or not they're going to use the advice of counsel defense. She's got all these deadlines running up against Jack Smith that she isn't enforcing against Donald Trump, and it's really problematic. So I don't want anyone to anybody to think that this whole scenario is going to end anytime soon. All right. And if you need another reason to get out the vote, I'm going to remind you all, the president of the United States is the person who nominates people to the federal bench for lifetime terms. Okay. Until they die, they can stay on the federal bench. So, you know, the good news is that Joe Biden has appointed a more diverse slate of judges ever. He's appointed more judges than Donald Trump did. And, you know, this issue of making sure that the bench is full of progressives and Democrats is really critical to the future of democracy, because if you don't have the judiciary, you have nothing. So again, I just have to remind you all, if you need yet another reason to get to work on your mobilization efforts for 2024, this is a big one, like a really, really big one. All right. The people on the other side are already vetting candidates to nominate to the federal bench, and they're all like unqualified fascists. So, you know, again, we got to win this year. Okay. We had some questions about Fani Willis and the allegations that have been made against her with regard to one of the lead prosecutors in the prosecution of Donald Trump. Now, I told you all my opinion on this last week, and I told you all that I didn't think that there was any way in which these allegations were going to have any impact on the prosecution of Donald Trump. Over the weekend at her church, Fani Willis actually made a statement about this. And she pointed out that she nominated 3 special prosecutors for the Trump-related litigation, one of whom is a white woman, one of whom is a white man, one of whom is a black man, all 3 of whom she has tremendous respect for. Mr. Wade, who is the one who there are all these allegations swirling about that there's no evidence for, is the only black man among them, black person among them. And she raised the fact that they're challenging his credentials, even though he was previously nominated as a special prosecutor by a Republican, and that all of this smacks of racism. Okay, I have to say I completely agree with it. I mentioned this morning on Threads because I'm still really kind of like irked about the way in which some white male lawyers took this and ran with it as if it was going to be something that was devastating. I also have to point out that there are randos in my threads this morning who are saying, oh, it's like against judicial ethics if she was having a relationship with him and she nominated him to the role. Well, we don't have any evidence of that, right? That's the other problem here, is that we don't have any evidence that she was having an affair with Wade. So it's all based on unverified, unsworn speculation in pleadings and the fact that she's been called as a witness in his divorce case. That's it. Literally, she's just going to sit for a deposition, which could, by the way, be about his employment for purposes of determining what he's worth in a divorce case. So all of this is again, just a warning that we all need really good media filters and we also have to be very aware of our own unconscious biases. I am deeply troubled by how fast some white male lawyers and legal commentators leapt on this as if it was all just true and legitimate and therefore problematic, and it was going to be the end of the Fulton County prosecution. It's not. And I am going to wait to see the evidence on whether or not she's actually having an affair. But I have to point out that even if that's the case, I could tell you stories about how many white male lawyers, and I said this last week and it's worth saying again, have had affairs with their co-counsel while a trial was ongoing, have had affairs with prosecutors in their own offices while trials were ongoing. And again, the legal profession has some smarm attached to it. Believe me, I know. I know people who did oral arguments while high on coke. I know people who showed up drunk for their oral arguments in federal court. It's not like the profession is exempt from bad behavior. But I have to say that in light of the fact that she hired 3 special prosecutors and she's paying them all the same, and all of them are people who are very highly reputed and who have been nominated to the position before, the fact that this is the way in which this is playing out raises very serious questions in my mind. All right. So I don't think anybody should be paying any attention to this. And the next time somebody says to you that the allegations against a black woman are absolutely obvious in the death of everything, you should ask yourself whether or not that's legit before retweeting or reposting what they have to say. I'm upset by it, truly upset. All right. I want to talk for a second about disinformation. This topic has been coming up so much. We're spending inside our community for activists and organizers, the Atelier at Gaia. You want to learn more about that, get a 3-day free trial. You can go to Atelier at Gaia, Gaia, and it's atelieratgaia.com. We have been spending the month of January talking about issues of disinformation and messaging. And I just want to point out right now that there is a lot, I know I said this back in November. I know I said it when Threads opened up to Europe. I have to say that now that we are into 2024, there is an awful lot of activity right now that just looks like bot traffic, just straight bot traffic. And it is bot traffic that is designed to divide the left. All right. Like this morning on my feed, there were these anonymous accounts that had Karl Marx as their, I have to say, I have these moments where I'm don't think I'm dumb. I read Karl Marx in college. Don't play me with this nonsense. That have Karl Marx as their profile picture, who are in there going what do you know about legal ethics? So I just have to say something. All right. It is really important, and we're actually going to be talking about this in Community Salon next week inside the Atelier at Gaia. It's really important that you understand how to identify an account that is likely a bot, all right? If it is anonymous, if it does not have a legitimate profile picture, if it has 12 followers or 300 followers, and all it ever seems to do is talk shit, sorry, you should block and mute that account. You should not engage with it. Okay. And, I'm just going to say this. There's also a lot of accounts out there right now that look like real people, but all they're doing is stirring the pot. That's also not helpful. All right. Again, I got to be really clear with people right now. We're in a very volatile environment where anything that can be done to divide the left is going to help get Trump reelected. And we've got to be extremely cautious about anything that looks like it's designed to incite or inflame or enrage or distract. And all of this is really critical and key to how we stay focused on the end game in 2024. I'm really bothered. I just have to say this. I'm really bothered by how much smart people, even people who I have followed for a really long time, journalists who I respect, are falling for this right now, are reposting stuff, are engaging with stuff, are not managing their own emotional reactions to randos, like random accounts that could very well not be legitimate people. And even if they are, this is like a waste of time on social media and on Threads in particular, since everything opened up to Europe and Russia. I have to say that it is not worth anyone's time to engage in anything that is insightful. Like, not, I mean, insightful, like, aware, like inciting is what I mean. Anything that is inciting you to outrage, don't engage with it. Don't engage with it. And that includes, by the way, on other people's feeds, because I see some of you occasionally pop into my feed and be like, blah, 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 blah. And I get why you do it. And it's okay. I understand. But I'm going to tell you, all you're doing is driving traffic to that person's account or that bot's account. So, and again, yes, Philip is making a very good point here, which is that bots and disinformation accounts are going apeshit over Fani Willis right now. Why? Because they want people on our side of the fence to debate whether or not her actions are legitimate, because they are seeking to delegitimize that prosecution. Why? Let me give you another reason. Because it could be the only one for which Donald Trump can't pardon himself or end the prosecution or stop it in its tracks. Okay, so destroying state prosecutions, particularly this one, where there's already 4 people, by the way, who have flipped. Like, let's not forget this. There's no question of the legitimacy of the allegations. That is a part of an effort to drive division and undermine credibility for the prosecution of Donald Trump, and to do it on our side of the fence, because we care about ethics, right? We care about morals. People on the other side of the fence don't give a damn. I'm swearing a lot today. I'm going to get in trouble on YouTube. All right. Yeah, it's really important to be very aware of this. Do not argue with anyone online that you do not personally know. Period. Don't do it. Okay. And we're going to have a lot more to say about this, but I mean, like, the uptick is like truly obscene. And I'm sitting there watching it on my own feed going like, and I have my moments, don't get me wrong, where I'm like, what? What is that person talking about? And then I'm like, oh, let me just block that person and hide that for everyone right now. Just right now, right? Like, I don't need to engage with this person who I don't know, because they may not even be real. So that's the message for right now. And I do want everybody to be very aware that, particularly around hot button issues that trigger like our sense of morality and values and equity and everything else, be very cautious about how you engage. Okay, because there's a lot of work underway right now from bad actors and the far right and neo-Nazis and people outside of America who desperately want to get Trump reelected and will hop on anything that seeks to inflame and divide our side of the fence. All right. It's really critical, like really, really critical. And I'm just going to say one other thing here. Like, I'm seeing it pop off again about Israel and Gaza. And, you all know my feelings about this because I repeat them every single time. But there's a lot of very serious reporting out this morning about the breakdown in Biden and Netanyahu's relationship. And it's not minor, and it's not getting any traffic, at all. And, you can go read about it on Axios, but it's not getting any traffic. And, again, it's one of those situations where you have to remember that what you engage with on social media creates a bubble, and you've got to do your best to kind of like get all the information and all the facts. All right. Well, it doesn't just benefit Putin. Like, yes, it benefits Putin, John, but it doesn't just benefit Putin. It also benefits Trump, and it benefits the far right, and it benefits neo-Nazis, and it benefits, like really seriously funded white supremacist accounts that are posing as pro-Palestinian operators. Like, I mean, again, like filtration, everybody needs a media filter, and you've got to be really smart about it. You've got to seek out information. You can't just like expect the algorithm to feed you the truth. All right. We had a question this morning about something kind of interesting. So I thought I would just just discuss this. Somebody asked me a question about whether or not we'd ever consider becoming a nonprofit here. The answer so far has been no. And I just wanted to kind of address it briefly because it's something that we've considered for, our business, but because of the way that we do other things, like we have historically done work in corporate, it didn't make sense for us to be a nonprofit historically. All right. I'm just going to tell you all, though, that we have another endeavor that is being organized right now that I hope to be able to announce to you guys at some point that is going to be a nonprofit. And I'm not going to share any more details about that right now until we're like ready to go, because we're in the middle of forming it. But it will be an opportunity for us to do really great work for this audience and other audiences who need it on issues that are not directly political, but are relevant to the current moment. All right. Because one of the things about nonprofits, you can't ever take an overt political position, or you can lose your nonprofit status. So I can't come on here if I'm a nonprofit and tell you all to go, not vote for Trump and vote for Democratic candidates. I can't endorse people. I can't do any of that. So again, I'll have more to say about that coming up, because we do have something that we're planning first, second quarter of 2024. So stay tuned for that. But I want to just stay clear on why we're doing what we're doing here. All right. All right. I'm going to let you all go because we have like a lot of breaking news today out of Iowa and elsewhere. And I want to make sure that everybody stays up to date. But I will be back tomorrow morning at regular time. I will be talking about the results in Iowa, which we're going to start to get a window on in a few hours. And we'll be talking about a lot of other stuff too, because the other thing I just have to remind you all of is that we still do not have a ruling out of the DC Circuit on the issue of presidential immunity. That could drop at any time, literally at any time. And I thought it was going to drop on Friday, and it didn't. Every once in a while I'm wrong, but I will just tell you all that I think it's coming this week, and I'm not alone in that. So we're going to have a really serious week of legal breaking news this week, and I will be here for all of it. Thank you all so much for your support. Please like and subscribe to this broadcast if you have not done so already. If you're watching on the replay, please drop a comment, because that helps with our circulation. And if you're interested in asking questions in advance of every broadcast, you can, of course, become a paid subscriber at patreon.com/resistancelive for as little as $2 a month. That's less than a dime a broadcast, my friends. Subscriptions go all the way up to 100 with additional perks. But if you want to get in and ask me anything, you can hop on over there, and a question thread goes up 2 hours before every broadcast. All right. I will see you all here tomorrow at regular time. Have a great Monday. Please consider engaging in some form of public service today in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I will catch you all here live tomorrow. All right. Bye.